Unfortunately, the current economic crisis, and in particular the way European leaders and certain European institutions have responded to this crisis, have fundamentally challenged the solidarity upon which Europe is built and upon which you spoke earlier in your speech. Your speech today, and indeed previous statements I have read from you, show the work you are doing for Europe and indeed for Ireland. And I would like to thank you as a Member of Parliament in Ireland for that work. Today, I would like to use this opportunity to add one point to the conversation on Ireland and on Europe, and it is this. Ireland never received a bailout, and Ireland is not looking for a bailout. But we do need our €64 billion back so that we can contribute to the recovery. There is a common view I hear expressed often in the so-called creditor countries that we in Ireland mismanaged our internal affairs, that we made mistakes, and that we are now looking for other people's hard-earned money in order to correct our mistakes. Now, there is a mixture of economic and moral sentiment expressed, and indeed a conversation I had recently with a German economist, he pointed out to me that the German word for debt is exactly the same word as for guilt, which I thought was quite interesting. Now, mistakes have been made in this country. There's no question about it. We have made mistakes, and we are working very hard to correct those mistakes. But the interpretation that Ireland is looking for aid is absolutely incorrect. It is very damaging both to the solidarity of Europe and to our ability as a modern, developed society and economy to help Europe get out of this. Now, the numbers tell a very interesting story. To date, we have borrowed, or will borrow, €67 billion from the Troika. To date, we have poured €64 billion into failed banks, which in my opinion shouldn't have been given a penny. Now, that €64 billion is the equivalent of the German people being asked to put $1 trillion into a failed banking system. I was being interviewed recently by a German documentary team who were exploring this, and I put the 1 trillion figure to the journalist, and he said, and I quote, "There would be revolution." But that's what we've done so far. It is likely to go more. Now, what have these banks done with that money? They have given the money out to bondholders. And again, the numbers are very interesting. €124 billion of senior debt was held by the banks when the state guaranteed it. Now, in Greece, there was a 50% write-down for bondholders, for senior bondholders. And you ran a bookshop for many years yourself. You're a businessman. You know that if somebody takes over a bankrupt company, they will meet with the creditors to that company and they will write down the debts. It is absolutely standard practice. So when you knit these three figures together, what you see is very interesting. You see €67 billion being borrowed from the Troika, virtually all of it going into the banks, and almost exactly the same amount again being given by the banks to the senior bondholders in terms of foregone losses. So that's what happened. There's a €67 billion circle of money from the Troika through Ireland out to international banks and international investors. That's what's happened. Now, I've spoken to many people about this, and as I'm sure with yourself and everyone in this House, I've read many opinions. And I have yet to read a single opinion that says that this was morally correct or economically correct. And yet it continues to happen. On Monday, we paid another €1 billion out to senior bondholders in a bank which would have gone bankrupt. Now, the government is paying it. They don't want to pay it. The reason they pay it is because they are afraid of what the European Central Bank and the European Commission will do to Ireland in retaliation for not covering the losses of professional investors. And I take your points, and I have heard you agree that this is not a sensible a sensible thing to do. Now, the counter-argument goes, well, your 64 billion euros come in, or 67 billion euros, but it saved the Irish banking system. Now, as you know, half of that money went into a bank which no longer exists and which is under criminal investigation for what it was doing.
Thank you, Deputy.
The other half of the money has gone into banks which still exist, but which are increasing charges, are increasing mortgage rates, and are in essence sucking the rest of the money out of the Irish economy. The money from the Troika has achieved one benefit, and one benefit only, and that is to avoid contagion to the European banking system. President Schulz, you recently stated that the Irish people need to have some cause for hope for the future. That hope is not, I would suggest, in a deal on the 64 billion. It is not in a restructuring of the 64 billion. It is in a return of the 64 billion. If that can happen, we can, as a modern, sophisticated, high-tech, export-oriented economy, contribute to the recovery of Europe. I would like to thank you in conclusion for your support, and I hope that you will be able to bring this simple message back. Ireland did not get a bailout. Ireland is not looking for aid or benevolence. We need our money back so we can contribute to the recovery of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy.